to break. Topic is an anatomy of an injustice, and we're talking to Mr. O. Bobby Brown, who is a private investigator and a paralegal in Nashville, Tennessee. And of course, Mr. Brown, let's see if we can pick up on this cold case that you're dealing with an injustice that you're outlining now.
Okay. Now, I think I took you from the apartments where stuff started. Now we want to go, I'm going to take you now to the scene of where everything took place, which is 14th and Herman. Now, at 14th and Herman, there is a foundry there. Well, back in the day, people of color, young men, if they was taking that street, they realized that they got beat up real bad back over in there. So as these gentlemen were forced to take a right on Herman, on 14th, excuse me, and they went towards the east side of the street, not the west, because the west side would have been dark, east side was light, and there's a big light there. So they slid over there. Officer Johnson exited his vehicle. Now, let me set the stage on this Plymouth so that you understand. It's a Plymouth Fury, and at that time period, it was frost and it had snowed out here, and the car was kind of steamed up inside, so he couldn't actually determine there was 5 people in this vehicle. As he approached the vehicle, he realized there was more people in there than he thought. So he backed up, got back to a safe place with his vehicle, and then he starts telling people to disembark from that vehicle. He tells the driver to get out, then he tells the guy that's sitting beside the driver, told him to get out. Now we have 3 people in the back seat. Now, 2 people in the back seat exited from, we have the guy on the left and the guy in the middle, they both come out the same side. Now, as those 2 people cleared the vehicle, the guy in the middle, he said, "Brake." Well, the middle guy and the guy was sitting next to him and the driver, they ran south on 14th. At the same time as they're getting in the wind, Officer Thompson is turning the corner and he looks up and he sees people running. He's having a difficult time trying to stop his car because immediately he gets out and he fires 2 shots. At the same time he fires 2 shots. Now you have 2 gentlemen that's sitting on the right side of the vehicle, which is Mr. Allen and another gentleman. Now, the gentleman, Mr. Allen, is the passenger beside the driver. So now we have the guy that's in the back seat. He immediately, after Officer Thompson fires 2 shots, he immediately falls on the ground. Mr. Allen said, "Oh, Lord, they're killing us." He reaches up by that time period to pull out the weapon that was up under the seat, the front seat. Officer Johnson fires 2 shots. So Mr. Allen fires 1 shot, which hits Mr. Johnson. By the time period when Mr. Johnson fires his 2 shots, Officer Thompson turns around and fires 2 more. At that time period, Mr. Allen turns around and fires. He hits the car door splinters up into fragments, and he goes across the radio saying that he's in an ambush and that a shotgun was used, which is incorrect.
Which was a rifle that had hit.
Which was a 30-30, which hit the door, and the door became missiles because of all the shrapnel that came off through the doors and the glass. Now, what's real wild about this case is that there was an interview of Officer Thompson about 2 or 3 days later, and it's in the newspapers. And we picked this up. He said he fired 4 shots. Well, we started our case by trying to find several things. One, whatever happened to that Plymouth Fury? It was towed to the towing line. Well, when we started asking questions about that, mysteriously it burnt up. And no records do Metro have down there. They got records of everything else.
But they don't have
no record of that white Plymouth Fury. But now, we know they had it because they reference certain articles that was taken out of the trunk of that vehicle. Okay? So now, we got that one incident that's real wild. And then we have incidents of attorneys that was representing defendants that didn't do their job. They was afraid because we know for a fact, we found out that one of the lawyers that was brought in on this case had to stay at the Hermitage Hotel. And at the Hermitage Hotel, during the time period of this trial, no, he was not allowed to go visit the scene, nor was his private investigator. They was made to stay there at the premises, and the only place he could go was from there back to the court.
And so these young people were in reality charged with shooting the police officers when they came out with the rifle.
Right.
And so you don't find in the evidence anything that would suggest that they were guilty of what happened.
There has never been a doubt that Mr. Allen shot both of those police officers. But did the police officers cause their own demise?
Okay.
Why did Officer Johnson Officer Thompson fired 2 shots before he found out what the real story was. You mean your life is only worth $75 and it's possible on a bogus money order and you don't know for sure if the money order is bogus? That's the whole issue.
And so these young people were in reality incarcerated.
Yes.
And well, what happened to them? I mean,
well, let's put it this way. Within that night, when this went down, the police was already on Hermosa at those 3 apartments. They tore those 3 apartments up. They arrested people. There was several gentlemen that was brought down to Metro, and one of them got physically beaten down in the police department. I mean, they took a coat hanger and they beat him. See, and by the time they woke up the next morning, they knew exactly who did what, because understand one thing, we had 2 separate parties. We had parties that was dealing with some money orders, and we got some people that was leaving to go home. So how did these people that was leaving to go home hadn't caused no problems, did nothing with no money orders, did nothing? You understand what I'm saying? But how did they get caught into a thing to where that this police officer
shooting at them?
Start shooting at them.
And of course, they were eventually incarcerated, sent to jail and incarcerated. Yes. And how many of them were?
All were sent.
All were sent to
All were sent. Now, doing what's wild about this case now, the only person that's still left in jail now is Mr. Allen. Now, this is another thing that's wild about this case. They tried them the first time in 1968 for the killing of the black officer. They waited 20 years to try them for killing the white officer. And there is a newspaper clipping that says the reason why they did not charge them with the black officer at the time period was because he was having family problems with his wife and they didn't want to bring out the embarrassment. And there is a newspaper clipping of that.
And so this is really an injustice. And well, now what happened to all of those other individuals that were involved in this case?
One person was supposed to be hung in Baltimore, if I'm not mistaken. Another one, a couple of them died. One guy actually kind of killed himself because he never recovered from what the life experiences and what happened to him. So basically, all of them are dead except one person. And this is the reason why we have that subtopic: does injustice have a time limit? And in this instance, there should not be a time limit, and there is a solution to this. And the solution to this problem is to go back. Start with the time period that I'm saying, 1967, 68, and let's look at every incident that took place, and you'll find out, just like we come to the conclusion, that somebody made a big mistake. And a whole lot of injustice was done, to include the 2 police. One thing we forgot to throw in too, during this time period when there was racial unrest, there were 2 police officers that went and talked to the Senate and on the House of Un-American Activities, because Nashville got a grant of money. See, and here's the other thing we also found out: state schools. We know for a fact that Tennessee State University was told to reduce their out-of-state enrollment by X number of percentage, and then they turned around and did it unofficially another way. So they reduced the number of out-of-state students that could come here to get an education. All of that took place at that time.
And so all this was in a real sense a result of the killing of these 2 police officers. And the young people who were charged with it were incarcerated. Most of them eventually died. But now you have only one individual who, from that incident, who is still incarcerated now. And your question is there any kind of time limit, simply because it's been a long time, that he ought to be allowed to continue to be there, or is there any time limit
well, when we say time limit, we want to be able to go back and say, hey, even though he has exhausted all remedies, and understand that the court has limited how much could be brought forth in any type of a hearing, it's necessary for us to go back and look at this thing.
In order to try to correct an injustice, a grave injustice.
A grave injustice.
More than, well, in 1960, what, 1968?
68.
1968, during the height of Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination, as a matter of fact, right here in the state of Tennessee, and all of that came as a result
all of this come from, stem from that.
Very good. And of course, Mr. Brown, let me thank you for giving us that insight into this anatomy of an injustice.
Hey, one other thing I'd like to say. My telephone number is
Quick.
615-327-5409. There is a couple of more witnesses out there that know what's happening. I want them to call me.
Okay, very good. And let me thank you, Mr. Brown, for coming by and giving us that excellent information today. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.